What if I told you about a miracle chemical? One so revolutionary it helped win a world war and then made all of our lives incredibly convenient. But what if that same miracle substance had a really, really dark secret? A secret that would end up poisoning, well, pretty much the entire planet. This is one of the biggest chemical cover-ups in modern history.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did a chemical that was designed to make things safer become a global contaminant found inside all of us? Well, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to go way back, to a time when your own refrigerator was kind of trying to kill you.
Seriously, back in the 1920s and 30s, refrigerators were a menace. They used these super toxic gases that could leak and poison you in your sleep, or they used flammable ones that could literally blow up your house. So in 1936, the chemical giant DuPont set out to find a better way. And the big breakthrough came 2 years later, purely by accident. A chemist named Plunkett was messing around with some gas, and he discovered it had mysteriously turned into this weird, slippery white powder.
That powder, well, it turned out to be something called polytetrafluoroethylene, or PTFE for short, and it was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Plunkett threw everything at it, super strong acids, you name it, and nothing could dissolve it. It seemed to be basically indestructible, one of the most chemically inert substances ever discovered.
So, what was the secret sauce? How was this stuff so tough? Well, it all comes down to its chemical makeup, specifically this incredibly powerful bond between carbon and fluorine atoms. This bond, you guys, is the key to this entire story.
Okay, think back to high school chemistry. Fluorine, it's like the school bully of the periodic table. It is the absolute greediest element when it comes to electrons. So when it grabs onto a carbon atom, it does not let go. This creates this incredibly stable, non-reactive shield around the molecule, making it repel pretty much everything. This was its superpower. Now, before any of us ever heard of it, this material, which DuPont trademarked as Teflon, had a top-secret first gig, the Manhattan Project. You see, they were trying to enrich uranium for the atomic bomb, but the super corrosive gas they used was eating through all their equipment. Teflon was the only thing on Earth that could handle it. It apparently worked like magic, and it solved a massive problem in the race to build the bomb.
So after the war, Teflon was ready for its big public debut. But there was this huge, almost comical problem. If it's the most non-stick substance in the world, how in the world do you get it to stick to a pan? Plus, you couldn't just mix it with water to spray it on, and trying to produce it on a mass scale was dangerously explosive.
And that's when they found it, the secret ingredient. In 1951, DuPont bought this special acid from another company, 3M. It was called PFOA, but inside DuPont, they just called it C8. This chemical was the missing link. It acted kind of like a soap, letting them mix Teflon into water so they could finally create a revolutionary sprayable coating.
So here's how they did it. The C8 would form these tiny little bubbles in water that would trap the gas needed to make Teflon. The reaction could then happen safely inside each bubble. Then they'd spray this whole mixture onto a roughed-up, sandblasted pan and bake it. The water and the C8 would just burn off and, bam! The Teflon was physically locked into all the little grooves on the pan's surface. And just like that, the nonstick pan was born.
But, and this is a huge but, this is where the story takes a very dark turn. The same year that Teflon pans were hitting the market, DuPont's own scientists were running tests on that secret ingredient, C8. And their internal report from a rat study was crystal clear. It was toxic, it didn't break down, and it built up in the body. They knew it was dangerous, right from the very beginning.
And this contrast is it's jaw-dropping. Internally, DuPont knew C8 was poisoning animals. They knew it was showing up in their own workers' blood at high levels. They knew it caused tumors in lab rats and that it was getting into the public's drinking water. But to the public, the message was all happy-go-lucky. Even oatmeal won't stick to Teflon. This stuff got so popular it was in our carpets and our jackets. It even gave a mob boss the nickname the Teflon Don.
So how does a secret that big finally get out? Well, it all started on a small farm in West Virginia. A farmer named Earl Tennant just watched in horror as his cows started dying these gruesome deaths. They had tumors, their teeth turned black. He was absolutely convinced it was something in the creek they drank from, a creek fed by runoff from a nearby DuPont landfill. So Tennant hired a lawyer named Rob Bilott. And when Bilott sued DuPont, the company pulled a classic move. They just sent him a mountain of internal files, over 60,000 documents, probably hoping he'd just give up. But they picked the wrong guy. Rob Bilott decided he was going to read every single page.
And as Bilott started digging through this mountain of paper, he couldn't believe his eyes.
Tucked away in those files was decades of secret research. He found the rat studies, the monkey studies, the internal memos about contamination, all of it proving that DuPont knew exactly how toxic C8 was, and that they'd hidden that fact from everyone, including the EPA, for decades.
The lost discovery, as you can imagine, blew the whole thing wide open and led to a massive class action lawsuit. In 2005, this huge medical study was launched, tracking the health of 70,000 people who lived near the plant. It took 7 long years, but an independent science panel finally delivered the verdict. C8 had a probable link to 6 horrible diseases, including kidney and testicular cancer. By 2017, DuPont had paid out over $600 million to the victims.
So the case exposed the truth about C8. But here's the kicker. The problem was so much bigger than anyone imagined. C8 is just one single member of a gigantic chemical family of over 14,000 different substances. They're called PFAS. And because of their amazing properties, they're in everything. Your fast food wrappers, waterproof makeup, firefighting foam, even your contact lenses.
And this brings us right back to the beginning. Remember that super strong, unbreakable carbon-fluorine bond, the very source of Teflon's power? Well, that's what makes this whole family of chemicals a global nightmare. They don't break down in nature, they don't break down in our bodies. That's why they got the name Forever Chemicals.
And the result of all this? It's personal. It's estimated that something like 98% of Americans, you and me, have these forever chemicals in our blood right now. The contamination is so complete that scientists have yet to find a human blood sample from anywhere in the world that is totally free of them. It's in all of us.
So you'd think after C8 was exposed, that would be the end of it, right? Nope. Companies just tweaked the molecule a little bit. They replaced C8, which has 8 carbons, with a new chemical called GenX, which has 6, and they marketed it as a safer choice. The trouble is, our regulatory system is set up to look at one chemical at a time. So when a new, slightly different one appears, it's basically innocent until proven guilty. Turns out, later studies showed that GenX causes the exact same 3 tumors in rats that C8 did. It's an endless, frustrating game of chemical whack-a-mole.
And this cycle has led us to a reality that honestly sounds like science fiction. We've reached planetary saturation. PFAS have been found on every single continent, even inside polar bears in the Arctic. The entire global water cycle is now so contaminated that rain falling in the most remote places on Earth, like Antarctica or the Tibetan Plateau, contains unsafe levels of these forever chemicals. There is literally nowhere left to go that's clean.
You know, we've been down this road before. We figured out lead was bad, asbestos was bad, freon was bad, and eventually we acted. We made a choice. Today, we are just starting to understand the true scale of the forever chemical problem. Knowing everything we now know, the real question isn't just about what happened in the past. It's about what choices we're willing to make right now for our future.